Hello.
Hi, Jennifer.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Hey,
hey Nancy.
Nancy.
Yeah?
I may have to leave the meeting early. I'm picking up a foreign exchange student, and I got to be
Okay.
there by 5:30. So
Okay.
just to let
No,
you know.
thanks. Appreciate it. And Erin won't be with us today either. Of course, it's 3:30 and we don't have Dole yet either, which kind of concerns me.
Right.
You let me know there was a meeting, so at least he knows
Oh,
it's happening. Can confirm.
So, Ann, is Barb Nichols your aunt or
She's
what's
my
your?
sister-in-law. She was
Okay,
my brother Jim's wife.
got it. I
Yeah.
met her today and I've had interactions with her so many times, but I don't think I'd ever actually met her before.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good.
She's a
Yeah.
neat lady. How's her
Yeah.
leg?
Say again?
It's apparently Sid says it's healing up very nicely and that he
Good.
thinks that they may only have to go one more time to the doctor.
Good, good,
Oh, he
good,
says it's doing well. Yeah.
good.
She apparently had an appointment today for it.
Yeah, Thursdays she does. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss seeing her in the park.
Yeah, she still gets there. I talked to her a couple days ago and she'd just come back from the park. So
Yeah. Yep, she's a neat lady.
yeah.
Nancy,
Yeah?
Carl is out of town. He won't be able to join us today unless he gets on the remote. And I don't,
Carl?
yeah,
Okay, no problem.
yeah.
If Dole doesn't come on, we're not gonna have a meeting because I'm dependent on him to be the subject matter expert on a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
There's no city staff person here who can
Yeah.
No.
No.
grab him either, is there?
No,
I can text him. We're on texting status.
so she's doing that, and also we're still getting rumors that there is a spring under Hiawatha Gardens.
There's
And
not.
I've explained that you and others have done multiple research, and until someone can either show me a bona fide picture of such a spring or
Yeah.
some written documentation, bona fide written documentation that there is, and we're going to go on the assumption that there is not one, or not assumption. I mean, all the evidence is against it, but
The evidence is that it was capped and it's not there anymore. That's our story and we're sticking by it. We've done everything possible to try to find it. And we found, I think you know the story about we used metal detector club and we found something where it should be, which is right where the old entrance was on the west side. And they thought it was the capped well, although there was some evidence that it was the foundation for a big flagpole. So, but there is no active well spring anymore.
Okay.
And we can't quite put that one to rest.
Yeah, well, we should try because we've done everything to find it and it's just not been found.
Oh, as long
Bill
as
said
we're
he's just
talking-
a few minutes late.
okay,
He will be.
Okay.
just a little, and Ann, you might be able to shed light on this. You know, we've talked about, when we've been talking about shade, there have been references to those little shade pavilions around.
Right.
When we were at the plaza meeting, Deborah Harrison was in my small group. And somebody said, what are those little tent things?
Right.
That you see on the, and she said, well, those were little places where men could have privacy. Those
Right.
little and I said, really? And she said, well, it was a gentleman's club, you know.
Yeah, it was.
But it was a place where they could go in and do whatever with whoever.
That's
So-
what I've always heard. But it's always from Deborah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, maybe when we refer to those, well, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if she's right, but I thought it was very interesting. Those were not intended for shade, I guess.
Although they would have provided privacy. and shade.
Functionally.
And they would have provided lots of privacy, and lots of shade, yeah.
Right. That may not have been the prime purpose, but they certainly did do that. Yeah,
It probably
There's
was dark in there, yes.
it probably was.
There's a picture in the report of the original gardens building when it caught on fire, and there's one of those structures right in front of it, all covered with ivy, so you couldn't see it at all in there at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we've
Yeah.
probably given the same indications that came from Deborah
I think
Yeah.
on the history of those.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it was a gentleman's club, so
yeah.
that means certain things.
But I had been led to believe, I mean, there are different interpretations, insinuations when it comes to gentlemen's club. And I had led to believe that it was not with women, it was with just cigars and drink. Not anything more risque than that.
Yeah.
But
Who knows? Right.
Who knows? I know Deborah's read on it traditionally has been, it was where they could relax in all kinds of different ways besides cigars and drinks. So I don't know. I'm shady. Yeah. I'm not a historian, so I don't know.
Yeah.
They also show up on one of the surveys, and I'm wondering, was that during Prohibition?
Yeah,
Good point.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
point, Jennifer. Yeah.
They do show on the survey. Yeah. Those little structures. Yeah.
I'll look that up while we're waiting.
They probably provided a variety of purposes.
Probably. Yeah.
The PC way to say
And
that.
shade would be probably last on the list.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
so while we're waiting for Dole, one thing that we can talk about is
There
now,
you-
oh, Dole, we don't have to.
Hi
have to
there,
come-
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's all right, Dole. It's we'll just go ahead and get started now. So,
Okay, great.
any comments on the agenda?
Yeah, I had that question. Did you all note when? I need some clarification. You know, sometimes I take minutes and I just write down what everybody's saying and I think, yeah, I get that. And then when I start typing them up, I think, what in the world did that mean? So I need some help here, Dole. Under the, it's under schedule briefs. And we're talking about what information we provide to city council about the upcoming earthwork analysis. And
Yes,
members decided if the costs are not close, we don't need to go to council. If they are close, Denise said she would write a memo, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, if the costs for what are not close?
so I'll
what?
tell you what, Susan,
Okay.
I will modify this and send it back to you, but
That's perfect.
basically it's if the costs of the two different scenarios of raising the building or not raising the building were reasonably close, and that's a loose definition, then we would consider it. But I think what that statement was saying is that if it becomes extremely expensive, then it wouldn't be really an option, and they would just notify council via memo that we did look at this, but it was cost prohibitive.
Right.
Okay, that was my guess, but I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. So
Yep.
yeah, if you want to put in the,
I sure will.
thank you, Dole. Thanks for that.
Okay, so back to the agenda. Does anyone have any comments, changes to the agenda? Okay, sorry, Susan, you jumped ahead with the minutes. Do we have any public comment? Seeing no
mind.
public on, I will assume no. And then the minutes, it sounds like we're gonna defer the minutes until our next meeting, and once Dole put in the, his corrections.
Revision. Yep.
His revisions. Is that all right with everybody?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, then under updates, the roof, Denise had talked with me. I thought she might be on today. Talked with me last week. She thinks we're nuts not to do the roof thing, but I want her to come here and talk about that. Why she thinks that we need to do the roof thing sooner rather than later. So more.
Well, I have a brief update on that.
Okay.
She gave me direction to call another roofing company. And so I have an appointment on Tuesday with another roofing company to have them look at it.
Okay. Well, there you go then. We'll keep dragging this one out for another year.
And then we won't have to do it because we'll be starting on the building.
Exactly. Anything new on the floodplain? We were hoping to have maybe some additional info today. Dole, anything?
I haven't heard anything yet. I know I mentioned this at the last meeting, but we did get the datum survey data all revised. I have not heard from the floodplain, from the hydraulic engineer yet. So I don't have an update yet from her.
Okay. Anything new on the earthwork schedule? I think Todd was going to let us know.
Yeah, we can go over schedule.
Okay.
Let's see. I can talk you through it, or I could show you a copy of my Google Calendar. Do you rather have a visual?
I'm fine at this point with you talking through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you talk through it and show us. I don't care.
Okay.
I'm easy.
Okay. Let's see. So we were basing our schedule on trying to go to public engagement on the 30th. Actually, I think I will share my screen. That's the best way for me to keep track. Okay. So we're here. Floodplain just got started with the survey information. This one's old. So our floodplain will be complete on November 17th. With public engagement slated for the 30th, it doesn't give us any time to review internally with the task force. So wondering if that needs to slip. What we'd also like to do.
Jennifer, I think last time we decided that it did need to slip. Do I have that correct, task force?
We
Yes.
decided what
Yes.
needs to slip.
Yeah, if we're not going to get it till the 17th, yeah.
Community engagement needed to slip.
Yes.
Okay. Great. I don't think that that I understood that was a given. So so we can adjust this live.
Yeah, I think last time, Jennifer, you're right. I think what we decided was if we could get the date from you all today, then we would decide if public engagement needs to slip.
On the floodplain.
On the earthwork. I
On the
think
earthwork.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Right.
I
Yep.
say floodplain.
I was going to
you
say we keep
earthwork.
not floodplain, yeah.
correct.
I'll change this so I stop saying the wrong thing. Okay.
Could you,
Um,
Jennifer, just briefly describe what you think we're going to get on the 17th? I mean, is it going to be an analysis of what?
So it will be similar to the last round where it's probably a written narrative with images and some grading concepts of the two versions if we were to lift the building and if we were to leave the building where it is,
And costs.
and costs.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to that point, Jennifer, let's
Mhm.
maybe set up a meeting with me and DHM next week and make sure that they clearly understand what we're looking from them so that we don't have any surprises on the 17th.
Good idea.
Okay, so I think we want to meet with Olson. They're the engineers.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
on
Isn't that in the
earthwork.
contract, Dole?
No, it is, Nancy. I just want to make sure that it's crystal clear so that we don't want to have any other delays if they're like, oh, we weren't exactly sure that's what you wanted. So maybe the meeting lasts 15 minutes and they gave me 2 thumbs up and we're good to go.
Yeah, I think, we probably could all use that. So that sounds like a good meeting to have. Okay, so I'm taking notes as well. Schedule meeting. So part of what we'd like to do is, so we'll get the earthwork complete. We've set an internal date for our cost estimate to be created after that we get that report. The 27th, I think, is optimistic. We might want to push that out a week,
Jennifer,
or at least get a draft.
That's just for the difference in earthwork costs.
It would be a holistic estimate.
Right. Because there's raising the building, there's whatever you have to do to the foundation. It should be holistic, as she said.
Yeah, but we already have the cost to quote raise the building, and we already potentially have the estimate to do some of the foundation work. I'm just wondering if that couldn't be streamlined and not need a whole week to get us that cost estimate, since we already have those other 2 critical elements is what I'm hinting at.
I think that
and I can bring it up to Olson when we meet too, to see if they'll get the quantities.
Yeah, we have a third party estimator that isn't from Olson. And this turnaround makes me a little nervous on our schedule. I think we're going to need a little more time, but I understand that it's, a couple little pieces that haven't changed too much, but.
Well, go ahead, Ann, and then I'll speak again.
And I would suggest that, realistically, if we're looking at the end of November, that everything's going to slip till after the first of the year. So gaining a week here or there
isn't worth it.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, Ann, I thought you wanted to push, so I was trying to push.
We could, if we'll push when we have the evidence to push. We're not going to push without a full story.
But I guess my point was, though, the 2 different earthwork scenarios are very similar, one just bigger than the other, and both scenarios require the same foundation work to occur as well. So that's kind of a moot point in comparing the 2. The difference would just be the cost of raising the building and then the cost for the additional earthwork.
Right, and I hear you, Dole.
I'm just suggesting, I think we can maybe navigate. I'll talk with Olson, Jennifer, and if maybe we can get the quantities to the cost estimator sooner is what I'm hinting at. So and to your point, you're right. A lot of things slip in December, but
we're not going to get anything done, and we're not going to get a public engagement done right in the middle of December.
No,
so
correct.
We need to just back off a little, give ourselves the time we need, and we'll talk, I think, later about when we think in January would be a good time to have the public engagement, because it's just not feasible that it's going to happen in December.
And Ann, I'm with you totally that we're going to have to push public engagement now until January, which depresses the heck out of me. But I'm also in agreement with Dole can keep I won't say the pressure on, but keep asking the questions and meeting, because I think we've just slipped too much, and I can, we're giving ourselves another month here, at least another month, more like 6 weeks. But that'll get burned up in no time, as we've seen over and over again. So I think we can have our cake and eat it too on this one, to have Dole keep pushing as well as to push our own, the date that we're controlling back to January sometime.
Right, as long as we don't sacrifice the validity of the data. We
Right.
No,
want
I
good
concur.
data.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if we adjust this schedule, if we're going to the public, I assume we'll have some comments and coordination to do after that, and then maybe we go to the planning commission, and then we go to city council. I don't know if we can do that, 1 week, then the next CDs. put
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, council's the first and third Tuesday, so it,
And we want to have been to HPC before we go to council.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
we
so
had that
we just,
question.
yeah, and Erin would, it's too bad she's not here, but she can help us work through. I mean, it's probably not likely that we'll get to HPC in January because the public engagement won't be before the first Wednesday. So we'll probably be to the HPC in February, which could mean that they could go to planning commission, which I guess I was still a little vague on that, but I think she said we have to go to planning commission.
Yeah.
Before they go to council, so
Yep.
I was thinking that the planning commission was for the major development permit, and
it is.
and that was at 50% CDs. So we will go to planning commission, but we don't, that would happen maybe in March or something like that once we get the drawings to that level. I think it was really just about council and HPC at this early stage.
Yeah, that's not my recollection of what Erin said, but
No.
okay, we don't need to nail that down right
Okay.
now.
Susan, you look anxious there.
Well, we decided at the last meeting that we would take a concept plan to the planning commission.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
So they could go back. Did you say first Wednesday?
It's a second Wednesday, isn't it?
Second
Or
Wednesday?
the HPC is the first Wednesday. Planning is the second Wednesday.
Okay. Let me just move HPC first. Okay. So we could do a planning commission draft here.
Mhm.
And we're gonna go to them at 50 DD for the major development. Commission draft. Okay. So we could go to city council.
on the 16th.
Here. This is assuming nobody has any changes. And then we have to get our deliverables to city council here. And maybe our deliverables to planning here. Nope. Sorry, deliverables to planning here. Did I mess that up? HPC, did you say before or after city council?
Before.
Okay. But after public engagement.
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna have to wait till February to go to HPC.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just gonna move this out of the way. Am I making y'all dizzy? Moving month to month? Are you following? Okay, so January, public engagement, planning commission, city council. And then maybe what would you think about us starting CDs after going to city council?
Yes. Yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to start them before.
I guess my question is, would you feel comfortable with us starting CDs before going to historic planning?
To historic
February?
preservation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we could, let me move this up. we could start CDs as early as that date, but I think you all have warned us that when we go to city council, we might have revisions to incorporate. So maybe okay, making you dizzy again. I'm gonna move this back up. So we'll incorporate comments from city council, work on those. Maybe we need to go to city. This would be a work session week, the 30th, so we'd need to go to city council again. The first week of February.
Not necessarily. Well,
Okay.
no, the 16th is a third Tuesday, so that's a decision. They can make a decision that night.
Okay. If they have comments, then what would be the procedure to make sure their
Well,
comments are
the comments
acknowledged?
It just depends on how draconian the comments are. If it's pretty straightforward, then it can be approved contingent upon making a couple of changes. And we have no idea what the council is going to look like in January. So
Interesting. Okay. So that sounds like if there are minor comments, we could send back all of our drawings or images and just make sure that their comments are incorporated and
Yeah, Jennifer,
move
generally,
forward.
yeah, generally when we do that, they'll give us a few comments
Mhm.
and then we proceed incorporating those comments and go on our way. I don't know if we would have to loop back in unless it was pretty serious or significant comments. I mean, I think we can FYI them in the future, but hopefully they give us a direction and say, yep, please proceed, but make this, this, and this change and then go on your way, and we'll make those changes and go on our way.
Okay, so maybe that's what I can assume is if we're sending anything
I think you
back.
assume that, and like just Nancy said, unless we get some real draconian comments that are earth shattering, we should be able to, incorporate them easily enough.
Okay. So maybe we can even start our construction documents here.
So
on
that
the
brings up a
17th.
point about construction drawings, because that agreement will need
Mhm.
to get approved by council as well. The task force will need time to review it and see it, provide comments. So if you're looking to try to start construction drawings in middle of January, I mean, it would be great if we had your agreement on the January 2nd agenda at the latest, or even earlier,
Mhm.
so that we could get that agreement approved, so that we can at that meeting we can say we're just planning ahead of getting this agreement set up and approved, but we're still coming back to council to approve the concept plan, or I don't know how it was worded, but
to approve, coming back just to approve on consent calendar
yeah, but that would because it would be good, Jennifer, because it's going to take some time on our end and review to get that construction drawing agreement. So we almost need to have
We
that
need a
from
draft
you.
up here.
Yeah, we almost need to have that from you late November, early December, so the task force can review it, and then we have to plan ahead to get it on the council agenda. There could be comments and questions, and so it would be better to have that from you sooner than later.
And should the construction drawings start after the council meeting or after the HPC meeting?
I would think after council.
Okay.
It
Tweed, you
doesn't-
had something.
Yes, I don't mean to back us all up, but in thinking through HPC's role, it seems to me that given their ability to raise significant enough issues to create substantial change, that we either need to break that relationship and sequence up into two different things. We give them a preliminary and then we give them the final right before we go to council, or we do it all at once, but it needs to be then before public review.
They've had a preliminary already, Tweed.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. But there were lots of things hanging when they did the preliminary review. And I think if we are at the point where there is an imminent decision that could sway them one way or another, I really think we need to know what they think before we go public.
I think since we elected to put the storage inside of the hall, the elevations haven't changed significantly, and we did float the idea of having doors on the west side of the building to HPC, you know, kind of unofficially, but I think
remember.
that,
Yep.
yeah, that's the only change that I can think of that that we've made to the documents, and I don't. I mean, and you could probably tell us how much purview they'd have over the plaza, but I think that would be minimal.
Yeah, it would be minimal. I think they, for the most part, unless we were to decide to raise the building, they have seen the concept and have expressed no real concerns, including a door on the west side.
Okay, so we're probably overestimating them.
Yeah.
What the likely response is. Okay, fine, good.
Fingers crossed.
Mhm.
We'll make the assumption that they're going to be okay with it. How's that?
Yeah, I think for HPC, then we could go to them beginning of February almost as a courtesy, but then we'd want to go back to them after like 50% CDs when we go to planning for
Right.
the major amendment. So
Yeah, I think
so
we
maybe
do
we
it
go twice in pretty close succession.
right. I think the intent, and I think this is Aaron's intent, is we do it like we did the library. The HPC first gives their approval for the exterior design.
Mhm.
And they do have approval on any historic interior, and didn't look at that until they had 50% construction drawings, because they wanted to make sure there wouldn't be significant changes. Clearly, the Hiawatha Gardens, other than the trusses and the general look, the only thing that might be an interior issue would be the storage. So that would be the second thing they would look at. So I think that's true. We would go to the HPC twice, just like they did with the library.
Great, that works.
Yep.
So we could cover the storage on February 7th and just revisit the doors. And if that's what we get their blessing on.
Right. And they
In
would see the
February, that would make
entire
sense.
design. I mean, they
Mhm.
haven't seen the plaza, and I think you're right. There's not much they would weigh in on, if anything, on the plaza, but they need to see the final concept.
Yeah, we could do material concepts for the plaza.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's anything that, you know, raises a red flag.
Right.
Okay, so Jennifer, if you could itemize those, I don't know if Susan was able to get them all or not, but and then send them to us, that would be helpful.
Mhm.
That we can
Thanks for
have
doing
these
it
as
on the
target.
fly with me.
Thanks.
Yep.
Anything else, Jennifer?
No.
Okay, great. Then moving on. First of all, I wanted to tell you I was in a meeting with the mayor last week or earlier this week, and he expressed, because we're still on the November 21st agenda, Dole, so you can pull us off of that now.
Okay.
Unless we have earthwork, well, we won't have earthworks back by then. So pull us off of that and start, if you
Okay.
would start scheduling these other ones, get it on the agenda now. And but when I mentioned again that part of this might entail raising the building, the mayor looked at me with great shock, and I know I've told him before. So that was interesting. But I also wanted to tell you that in the same meeting I was with him, Jillian came in with the keys to Hiawatha Gardens for the mayor, because the Ute, Chief Joseph and what's his name, Frost, is apparently interested in making something of a home, having an office in Manitou, and they wanted to look at Hiawatha Gardens, which came as a great surprise to me. So I explained that there is no office space in Hiawatha Gardens, and that I think Denise mentioned that there are some other places that might have office space. So I mentioned that it'd be great to have events there with the youth and so on. We'd love to have events there. So I just wanted to share that with you because it was interesting and surprising. So that's all on that. And then Dole, you're going to meet with Jillian and Megan and Aaron. Were you able to do that about the plaza design and what came out of that?
Yep, I have a graphic to share, and I have some other information about it. Let me share up my screen here. So we met with Megan, and do you guys see that?
Yes.
It's not giving me the little like border around it that shows it's sharing like it normally does. So some of the comments, so this is Aaron, these are some of our edits from the existing drawings, and I think the biggest thing about it was to increase, Aaron would really like to increase the planter spaces, and she provided a good deal of notes. Instead of having it be, I don't know if you can really see, you can, this right here is the old or the existing proposed line. And she is proposing extending out these planter boxes out. The green would be the planter box so that you could get more soil for the trees, maybe squeeze in some more trees. So that was something that she was passionate about. And so here she showed and carried the additional bigger, larger planter boxes and how they would impact, we're calling this the flex space. So here are BVH's drawings, and then here is how the larger planter bed would affect some of those flex space uses. And then she carried it also into the shade structures and sails as well. So that was the big thing. Something else that we talked a lot about, and you guys heard this part, is that this area is still a little clumsy, for lack of a better word, that it's a bit of a physical barrier to accessing the space. There's just a lot of structure there.
Yeah.
She didn't draw it on this, but she also had some ideas about extending the planter boxes bigger to have more soil for the trees and to have more vegetation options. And Megan provided input on the value of the flex space and how great, and everyone agrees for that. So there's no question about the flex space going away. But she confirmed how valuable it would be to the city, and wedding reception or after cocktail hour or whatever definition you want to use for that event. She thinks it's great. She is going to do some research on what we think this space could potentially rent for with the flex space, the outdoor flex space. I think we've done some analysis on various facilities throughout the city, but not an indoor outdoor space like this potentially could be. So she's going to work on that. We are going to try to figure out how to try to capture what we think. Her comment was that if this does become a multi-use, a multimodal community space, that it's going to need staffing. It can't just be like Memorial Hall now, where it's kind of like, it's kind of loose who's managing it. I mean, facilities comes in and checks it, and Megan books it. But something like this, and it could get busy, is going to need to have some staffing support, whether that's a 0.5 FTE or something like that. So that's an element that we're going to have to work through, and I think work towards getting an answer as far as the city is concerned when this thing goes live. we need to have those things answered about how it's going to get staffed, how it's going to get funded, and that kind of thing. Trying to think what else. Jillian will check in with her arborist and her planting team about the maintenance. Her comment was that there's a decent chance that the vegetation maintenance on a site like this would be turned over and contracted out to the city gardener that's already maintaining several of those flower beds. We did not discuss whether or not like if that would just be a part of the annual contract, or if Hiawatha would pay a portion of that. Like those are some details to work out, but judging by the amount of space here and the size, it would be maintained by the city gardener at this point. So she was just really passionate about the planter beds and the tree having enough soil. And then we haven't yet, Jennifer, we haven't yet, we didn't give Josh a lot of time. We met with him on Monday, but we haven't yet seen his revisions back of all those comments. So task force, we will be getting a revised plan to this. Like there are some things that we've pointed out, you know, like this is still too narrow. We talked about that one of the parking, Susan, I'll come to you in just a second. One of the parking kiosks that we should have it over here, because, you know, when you are, you know, the majority of the parking lot is to the east. And when someone parks there, they can't visually see a parking kiosk. And I'm out there all the time and people are always like, where do I go? Where do I go? So, you know, we've talked about some minor improvements like that. We think that we can maybe adjust where some of the, you know, shift this over a little bit to provide that 10-foot space. So we should still be getting those revisions from DHM through BVH. I hope soon, so we have time to review them.
We talked to DHM today, and we thought today's agenda was more schedule focused, so they can be ready to present the next round at, I don't know if we're meeting next week.
We are.
Okay. Next week, and if these comments are available, then we can send those and get those incorporated.
So Susan, go ahead.
I'm going to take us backwards here a minute. Tweed and I both will. And just hear us out. And if you think we're crazy, that's okay. In looking at the shade structures, you know, Nancy, I'm with you. I just really don't like, I know we heard solar shades. I know we heard shade, and I think that's important, but those giant support beams, I think will just absolutely destroy the flow of the plaza. And this isn't, you know, DHM is following our direction. I'm not trying to take shots at anybody, but when you see those structures, number one, I think they're very contemporary. They're not in character with the historic building, and the massive beams, I think, are really disturbing. So we were wondering, could we take out the shade structures and instead find some alternatives? Like if somebody wants to have a wedding reception outside the building, they rent a tent and put it up, or the city buys a tent and they rent it out as part of the event. Could we use, I know Todd was saying this can accommodate those little tents like they use at farmers markets. Could we use those for special events? And I know you're not supposed to plant large trees. I understand that, but could we buy 2 or 3 trees that are larger than what you normally plant when you plant trees, and strategically place them so that we know in 10 years they're going to do a great job of providing shade in the areas where we need them? I just would encourage us to rethink those giant shade structures. I think they just destroy the character of the plaza.
Yep, I agree.
Susan, I'm sorry, can I just get some clarification? When you say you refer to like these big
Yeah,
arms, right?
well, yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
then does your comment also apply to a situation like this where you would just have poles?
Yes.
Is that also, do you feel the
Yep,
same about
yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe we're the only ones that this bothers, but Tweed, you want to say
I don't
something?
think so. I think looking long-term, we are after shade being provided by the tree canopy. That seems to me to be what we have heard consistently. And with the work that Aaron put into, yes, we should do this list, these are no's. Building a shade structure is a no. It never should have been part of any construction drawing or anything, any direction we were going. So I'm with Susan. I think trying to make that work with a shade structure with sails is not appropriate and doesn't fit with the character of what we're trying to accomplish.
And that's acknowledging that people at the meeting said, let's use, shade structure, let's use, what do you call them?
Sales.
Yeah, but I don't think they realize what it would take to do that. I mean, it's gonna take some big old honking poles all over the place. So I don't know, are we off base? Are you guys okay with where we're going on shade?
Bill,
Yeah, I agree with you, Susan and Tweed. I think it's out of character to have a very modern shade structure when we can do it another way. And I like your idea of getting some trees and letting them grow, and we can also come up with a portable shade structure that if we need it, we can put it out there, but it's removable and you'd have to erect it and all of that. Sort of like the event tents that we see on farmers markets and things like that, maybe even bigger. I don't know. But I agree that I would not vote in favor of these massive shade structures that sort of take away from the character of the building and the whole concept of what Hiawatha Gardens is all about.
So
Yeah, and I agree as well. And I think the HPC could actually have some issues with that.
okay. Let me just state some facts about all of this. All right. So one, these could be retrofitted to the site 2 years after we're done, if it was decided at that point. Okay. So the nice thing about these is that if everyone got out there and said, we need shade, that could be added later. So that's not the kind of thing that has to be done from day one. So I think that takes some pressure off of it. Okay. Two, you would probably never get trees big enough to cast any kind of significant shade on the flex space. You will get some shade on the benches, but you would never get trees big enough on the flex space. It's too far away.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and Susan, so you're right, that this might be a situation where we would want to get bigger trees, like not little 1.5 inch, maybe we get 2.5 inch, but you can't go too big. The trees they have too much damage when they get planted. So there's a balance. You can go a little bit bigger. So I think we could totally handle that. So I think it could be like an add-on option. It does not have to be decided. It could just say, okay, let's table it and we could get the space. Maybe we want to save costs and see how the space is utilized before you do it. I do want to point out, so this is just me as an individual with young kids at the time. I do like the idea of having poles, and I get the hesitation. I totally get it. Poles in the corners, and then you have cables strung, and then you have the ability to do like these type of pullable, like slidable, say when, you know, they're like pergola sails. I don't even know what you call that, but I do like the idea. Now, this model is showing all these poles in the way, and that clearly would not work. But what I think would work is if we had poles in the corners. I'm drawn all over the place. I'm going to lose everybody because I'm going to be so confusing here. But to have it be permanent structure, and part of it is because to rent a tent and to set up a tent in that spot would be very expensive. It probably takes 6-8 hours to set a tent up. And you have all of the cabling and the support, the center columns of those tents. You've walked in those things, there's like poles everywhere, right? To have a permanently installed structure, you can benefit from the strength and foundation and just have simple poles in the corner and then cables connecting them. But again, the good news is that could always be added later. It does not have to be decided. We can go through all the CDs. We can even build the site and be like, you know what? Let's go ahead and add in some sails or whatever the case may be. That's just my opinion. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I'm open to those ideas. I do think, though, we need to have an answer before we go to the public in January when they say, well, what are you going to do for shade? We can't say, well, we don't know. We'll figure it out later. So I think we need to have at least an initial plan saying we're going to try this first. And, then if we have to move to big structures, we will.
Well, what would you say we try first? What would be your recommendation?
I don't know. I mean, you clearly don't think having those tents that you put up when you need is workable. So I don't know the solutions. All I know is I just think it just looks ugly to have poles everywhere.
Yeah.
So
That's fair.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, an idea would be to, when you're pouring the concrete, put in something you can bolt to more or less flush with a cap on it.
Yes.
That would allow you to erect a pole should you need it.
Yes.
At that particular location. And you get the best of both worlds. If you absolutely need it, you go put a pole up and bolt it and string a wire around it and so forth to provide the shade. And that gives you the option of satisfying both needs.
Bill, I think that would be I think that'd be a good idea. I think part of where I'm coming from, Susan, is that, I am at Hiawatha all the time, but never for an event. So when I look at this space, I consider it the day-to-day average Tuesday to 11 a.m. space. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Tuesday to 11 a.m. when there's 600 incliners in town, how would they want or utilize this space? People have e-biked in, they're sitting, they've just finished hiking, they're refreshing. Like I think about the casualness and the community nature of having a shade feature. I don't really look at that as a benefit to an event as much, because they're generally going to be, we'll have the big major events. And then I might be wrong to assume, but I think most events will be more later in the day, evenings. I don't know that. But I just think about it on a Tuesday at 11, what would be nice out there? And it'd be nice to be able to sit in because there's really not a lot of shade in Manitou if you are not next to the tree canopy,
And Dole, wait, did Susan or Tweed have something else to say?
No, I'll just wrap up for me anyway. I hear what you're saying, Dole, and I don't doubt it. You know that space a lot better than I do. I would just encourage us and DHM to just take another look. Can we find another approach, Jeff, that doesn't require these large structures? That's it. So sorry, go ahead.
And I would like to say that I like Bill and Dole's approach to it. I've always liked the image up in the top right hand corner much better than the image, the shade sails. I just think it looks better. I also really like Bill's idea of having it as needed. But I know on previous slides, we'd had brightly colored poles. So I think that the poles may be able to be incorporated as an art feature as well. And I also see those poles as a way to string up some lights, which I think oh, by the way, if we're having evening events, which that plaza would be a great place to have evening events, but it's going to need some sort of lighting fixtures. And I can't remember what all, other than, inserted into the benches and so on. I think there was low level lighting, but I think some overhead lighting that is appropriate to night skies, which I think is pretty easy to do. I know I was at a wedding up in Estes Park, the YMCA up in Estes Park earlier this year, and they strung lights overhead, and it was absolutely gorgeous and essential. They needed those lights overhead. So I agree, and I'm glad you brought it up again, Susie, because I never did like most of those options. Where I just don't like the shade sails, and I was willing to go along with it because 3 of the 3 groups wanted them, but I don't like them. I don't think they fit in with the historic concept at all. But I also see the value of some shade on a as needed basis. So I think those are my comments. Jennifer.
Yeah, maybe you've probably heard this, but maybe I'll tell you again that when we were looking at the shade sails, I think, we had the same reaction, like it's a large structure. It's kind of nice because there are minimal poles in the site, but thinking that those poles could end up being something similar to the light fixture in this photo, that it could be a little more historic looking. I know the sails are towards the modern side, but our idea of going to the rectangular option, could you go to the next page? Joel? I forgot. Yeah, this one. Looking at the rectangular retractable shades, we thought kind of was the better of these 2 options just because it could be flexible. You totally understand the comments about all the poles, but like that because it was more adaptable and could almost like go away if we needed it to.
Jennifer, which one are you saying? Which option were you saying?
Option 2.
Yeah, I think that's what Nancy was saying too.
Just not as many of them. Like Dole, I like Dole with just in the 4 corners.
Well, and so
Yeah.
Susan, my question to you is, what would you think about just the 4 poles in the 4 corners? Would that still feel as invasive to you and not as modern? Like if we just had, and I was just trying to Google like span width. I have to look into that a little bit more and see. You may need a pretty legit pole, but would that feel better if these poles were black and eventually the tree canopy would kind of swallow the poles up a little bit?
Or brightly colored, like in the.
Or that's right, Nancy, you said that. That's true. That's true.
And, if they weren't huge holes or poles, if you could hang historic planters off of them or something, I don't know. I mean, my first choice is no poles, but based on what everybody has said, that just may not be realistic. So I certainly like the retractable kind with minimal poles better than I do the sails. But Tweed, did you have something to add?
Yes, I agree. I think it still is intrusive. And I understand the importance of shade. I keep wondering if there isn't an innovative, different solution that we haven't looked at. There's got to be in this country and Europe and wherever, Australia, wherever.
I got another idea for you.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, if the poles are fixed, why not, so to speak, imitate a light fixture and put a light on the side of the pole that could be turned on and off from inside, and that would provide some light, at least at night, for a night event, and you wouldn't have to string all the wires and everything else, and that would be sort of somewhere in the middle, and you could put a cap on that pole that probably looks very historic, sort of like an old light fixture, and hang the light from just below that cap, and that might soften the effect of the poles on the building. And you could even go further and get a more ornamental type of pole. So I still like the removability option, and but there's another one for you to think about.
Sure. So how
Thanks.
about, oh, I'm sorry, Nancy. How about
No, I was
we plan to see if we can do the retractable shade and see what kind of spans we can do, and then what size poles require that kind of span. And how about we at least have that conversation and research first?
Yeah, I like Tweed's suggestion that there's got to be another solution out there. And that would fit our criteria. Because it's hard to believe that there's not something that's more historic looking, not as modern looking, or as massive, because that just doesn't fit with the building at all.
So I'll pass on this feedback to DHM. More historic, less massive. I'm gonna say flexible, like as in the operable option 2 is better.
Yeah, and I think we can just eliminate option 3 from the palette.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha. And
So-
we'll check out the spans, because I feel like even if the poles are steel and larger, that we might be able to span with cable between the two.
Yes, I totally agree.
Jennifer, could you always
Mhm.
also encourage DHM to do some research and let's just look at other stuff? I mean,
Yes. Yeah, I'll ask them that too for sure. Sorry to cut you off.
no, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on then.
Well, can we, I brought it up and we didn't really make, how do you guys feel about extending these planter beds to the shape of the green shape? It has,
Sorry,
you know,
I meant to comment on that. I think that makes a great deal of sense.
I like it.
okay. So the only downside that I thought of regarding that is how it affects all of these spaces. That's it. I mean, we're taking an open space and we're narrowing it down to a more restricted space. So as long as we're willing to accept that somewhat permanent restriction, I think we can be good to go.
Okay.
Joel, was there, did you have a square footage goal for those where the shape can be flexible?
Say that again.
Is the
Like
shape and what that
U
planter ends
shapes?
up being? Yeah. Is
I
that
think,
flexible?
well, no, but she kind of mimicked the 10 foot by 10 foot. Since that was kind of a 40-foot run, it kind of took half of that away to have enough cubic feet of soil, I think she thought, for the root balls.
Okay. So 10 by 10 at the trees.
Well, so yeah, I think that it was just extending that planter box 10 foot by 10 foot on both ends there. And then if there was ever like, so this is a good example like of this, like, so we would lose the ability to put this tent in here and this tent in here, but they could still have those tents there for whatever, farmer's market or something like that. And then the idea was that if this was done, this could be where the stage is, in between the kind of planter boxes and kind of help separate and isolate them.
Yeah, I guess my question is if DHM wants to propose a different layout on this planter, if there's a square footage that is in mind.
I don't think so.
Some...
I think it just was kind of mimic. It was, I think really the motivation is if I'll just use this one. It doesn't do us any good to just do half of the space because then we've made this other space non-usable really anyways already. So you might as well take it all, I think was kind of the point. So those were an additional 100 square feet each. So maybe, maybe if there was able to add 200 square foot into that layout somehow, that might help with the tree having enough soil for the roots.
And she also extended on the north side, the ones on the north side a bit too.
Yes.
Would you send us this?
Yes,
marked
yes,
up
I
PDF?
will.
Okay.
Yes.
which I think definitely fits in with what the public was asking for.
Okay.
More we can do on that, the better. And as well as, pollinator garden. So it's not just all trees, it's pollinator gardening as well.
Yep. Okay. Why I have this screen up, I have some interesting things. We were talking about whether or not to raise the building. And, at the end of the last meeting, I showed that contour map. And I think what I would do, sometimes it's confusing. And so the question I've been wanting to know is, there is sidewalk. I'm going to switch colors. There is sidewalk. So Aaron very smartly brought up that there is this little concrete retaining wall around this bus shelter. And that concrete retaining wall really prohibits any kind of access around the site because you have to walk all the way around and get in from the front side. So basically this whole area only functions from the Old Man's Trail side. The question I asked was, well, what would we need to do to make this site flat in relation to Hiawatha Gardens? We've talked about 18 inches. We've used 18 inches primarily because that's what we think is the minimum to get out of the floodplain. But I asked the question, what would it take to get the finished floor elevation of the building to match the sidewalk on Old Man's Trail? Okay. Are you following me? It's 26 inches. So if we raised the building 26 inches, we would be flush. The finished floor elevation would match the sidewalk elevation. And then the plaza would functionally be flat except for what you would need to do for drainage. So you could have just a 1% slope and a 1% slope, but the site would function flat. And these things like this go away. You can put the bus shelter where you need, the bike lockers go where they need to go, your planter boxes are all there. And so the whole site just evens out on the west side. Now, to the north, it ties in through the parking lot. And then on the east side, which you can't see, it connects in where that street light is to the far east. I could pull up a Google map, but it doesn't matter. So I'm only just pointing this out because I think to make this space function and operate optimally, now it'll still work without raising the building, okay? So I'm not saying we have to. I'm only just trying to do as much research on all these variables as possible, that if we so chose to raise the building, it might be worth the conversation at least about what it would look to make the site function. And then all of our ADA stuff is real easy because we're all matching. So that was just my brief little analysis. It stays here with the task force. But I found it somewhat interesting.
Yeah, and it would be interesting if it cost like $20,000. Is not going to.
No, it will not.
And the amount of money we have to raise for this to begin with is significant. And I think the amount of money, and we'll wait till we see this from BVH, that it would take to actually raise the building is just going to make it infeasible.
Yeah.
And the reason the mayor looked shocked when anybody mentioned that is it's a shocking concept.
Yeah, it's true.
It really is. I mean, Manitou is a hilly place. We are not going to make it flat. And I think the concept that we are is not worth a lot of discussion, frankly. It works the way it is. It will work fine the way it is.
Not having the earthwork analysis, I think generally the way that I'm thinking about it is that our goal would to have a no-rise situation once the earthwork study comes back. So if you're essentially raising the left side of the site, I'd assume that we have to cut on the right-hand side of the site, so then you might make the
No,
parking lot
no,
lower.
no, it just, that floodplain that has to be mitigated just like cuts into the corner like this.
So Dole, I'm also, and I share this with you, I would prefer not to raise the building. I'm certainly, want to await the costs to
Okay.
do good analysis, but at this point, I appreciate the concept that you present, and in an ideal world, as Ann said, if it costs $20,000, maybe.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that that's what it's going to cost, and I
So-
don't think benefit is going to outweigh the risks,
Yeah, or the costs. Yeah.
the costs.
Speaking
And
of
the-
cost, yeah. Well, speaking of costs, I feel like I still have an unanswered cost question. Okay, so let me wrap this up. So anyway, that was for your digestion. Okay, is when I'm out on that site, I'm always just looking about, I'm trying to think what would be the ultimate solution, and then whatever is decided after that, I think we can confidently go, and if we get questioned or asked or about this, we can give quality answers to some of those complex questions. And that's really my goal, right? I'm not going to be deciding on this, but I do need to be researching and evaluating these options and have these answers, because I'm going to be the one that who gets asked these hard questions, and I need to do my best to have somewhat decent answers.
Has anyone approached you from outside the task force about this, Dole?
No.
Okay. I would just ask that you kind of, support whatever the task force.
I do. And we've talked about this too, Nancy, and I've asked that we can have just conversation in the task force, research things, and
Mhm.
I hate to use the term, but kind of have it be a safe place.
Right,
Because
exactly.
often what you hear, I will be out on a site and I'll say, yeah, we'll look at that. And the next thing I know, it's Dole said they're going to fix it. And all of a sudden I'm obligated to something. And I'm like, no, it's not what I said. So I'm just brainstorming with you. You can leave it at that.
Well, let's not forget, these are public meetings that are recorded and anybody can watch at any time. So the concept that we are doing this in some closed fashion
Well, I
is
guess
just
that's
not
true.
true. It's just not true.
It's not true, but my point is that I would prefer not to have, and you're aware of this, Ann, I've been on council long enough to see council members go out and undermine,
Yes.
and particularly in the past, several years ago. And that's just very uncomfortable when that happens. So,
Right.
but you're
we
right, are in a
we
public
sh-
meeting.
Yeah,
So-
we should all remember that anybody that wants to watch this after the fact, even though they're not on right now,
And we'll
can
have
do
no idea.
so,
Yeah.
and that what we say is public. And
Yeah.
we
And
need to treat that as such.
sure. But the point is that everything I'm proposing is not regarding cost. Cost is an enormous factor, and cost can easily say, no, we don't have the additional money to do this. That's the decision, and we all move on. But at least we would know.
No, and I appreciate you trying to always looking for, all the possible options that are out there, Dole. I do think that is helpful.
So also, this is the same budget that I have sent out. There's been very little change. I had a little bit of revised numbers from PPRTA, but this is kind of where we sit. I'm showing that we have a deficit. Oh, and Ann thought that I maybe had done my math wrong.
Well,
What?
you corrected it though.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
It
That's
is a
right.
deficit, and it is a
Yeah,
deficit.
correct. So there's some, I keep bringing this up, and I feel like I could reach out to PPRTA and ask if we could do other member agencies to borrow what we potentially think is the deficit from like City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County, and then pay it back in future funding years. Very similar to how we funded the West End job, the WAP job on Colorado Avenue.
And that's a possibility, Dole, but there's other sources. I mean, we still got a $6 million reserve.
okay, but
I think that that's a possible option that we can look at.
well, I'm getting a
But if
lot
we
of
need-
pressure for not having this project fully funded and asking for funds and
From-
all this stuff.
We don't
Well,
even have final cost, Dole.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know, but-
we won't have good costs till we have construction drawings and go out to bid. So
But
I
and
think,
I could have this lined up. I can have those agencies being like, yes, we're willing to loan you money. When you know the numbers, let us know. I could have the conversations with them, because if they all say no, then that's not an option. But they
I-
could say,
I think it's
yes.
premature. I honestly,
it's something that we're gonna have to pay no matter what. Even if the member governments agree to loan us this, we still have to pay it back ultimately. So it's,
Absolutely.
do we pay it out of,
But Nancy, in 2024, we're going to pay off our loan from El Paso County on the WAP job. And that was $200,000 a year. So it's not exactly the same, but we are potentially now going to have an additional $200,000 a year of PPRTA money starting in 2025. Now, can the city use it? Yes. I'm just throwing it out there as a funding option.
no, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the options that you present to us.
Speaking of that, have we talked yet since I talked with the CDOT grant folks?
mhm.
We talked about it last week,
Okay.
last week.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So you're good. And I'm still optimistic that we can get that grant.
I do too.
So, I think for now, we just let it go. I mean, I don't care if you're, well, yeah.
I'll let it go. I just want you guys all to know that that is a potential option. It's something that we could get queued up and get the green lights from some of the other agencies if we chose as a city to do that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Jennifer, are you
sorry,
just?
I do have a comment or question. Going back to costs, one thing that Dole, I imagine you might want to get the city's pulse on is this is going back to raising the building or lowering it, or not lowering it, leaving it in place. Just what the associated risks, or what you're going to pay in insurance. And I know you've mentioned like buildings in Manitou are self-insured, but does raising the building, is there a cost that the city's
Yeah, and Jennifer, I
assuming?
think all those things will be taken into account once we get the earthwork costs.
Okay, perfect.
And really, Jennifer, I don't think I think that we're pretty confident the building would be okay the way it is.
Because
Okay.
Aaron had done a very good job several months ago about outlining all the costs and risks, or the benefit, the cost benefit.
So yeah, to
and
your
included
point,
all the,
there isn't we're not paying like $80,000 a year in flood insurance that we would have to stop paying and we could save that money. We're not in that situation.
Okay.
I mean, it would be nice if we were, because then we could save it, but we're also not spending all that money on it right now either. So.
Okay, that's good to know.
okay. So moving on, I hope we lost Bill. Oh, he said he might have to leave early, didn't he? Susan and Tweed, do you want to talk about the community open house now that we've delayed it over a month? Do you want to just wait on that?
Well, I think if we could just talk about intent and get agreement on one thing, we don't need to go into the agenda today and all that stuff, but I think it's important for the task force to decide. We've heard both things during task force meetings. We've heard, let's do public engagement, meaning let's ask people if they have any serious concerns about the plan,
And be prepared to change.
Or is it just public information, meaning, hey, folks, this is what we're taking to council, and not asking for, do you wish something could be different? Do you need something to be different? Like, for instance, if we're asking, a wish could be, I'd like to see more flowers along the creek, which is doable. Another need that could come up, which kind of gives me nightmares sometime, is the neighborhood saying, we hate that entrance and exit off of El Paso Boulevard. that's much more complicated and probably not possible to change. So
My understanding, Susan, is that I'd always taken this to be an information meeting, not a community engagement meeting, not to garner, what else do you want in this? To me, it's always been.
no, let me stop you there and
No.
clarify. We're not saying, what else do you want? The
No.
question would be, do you have any significant concerns about what we're proposing? What we're looking for are fatal flaws. We're not starting over.
Okay.
Saying, do you like this plan and why do you like it or don't? We're looking for serious things that if we don't address them, either by changing something or figuring out we can't change and knowing why, what we don't want to happen is going to city council and the neighborhood comes in and says,
Yeah.
we hate this.
Council-
Nobody asked us if we like it. We hate it. And, we may have to say, Dole may have to say, we can't change this. We looked at other entrances and exits, but we can't change it. But I don't want to get us on that. But,
Right.
and we're not trying to talk you guys into either way. Either way we can make work. It could be a public information meeting, or it can be, do you see any fatal flaws with this plan that we need to know about? So it's your choice. And based on what we all decide we want to get out of this meeting, we'll do the agenda. We have ideas for the presentation and everything else. But so public information or an opportunity to weigh in on the plan. And
So I think it's public information. I think we've been to the public a number of times. And we know the issues, and we do know that some of the people off El Paso Boulevard will never agree with the entrance where it is, but we can't change that. So I think it's, at this point, it's information. Unless we do something that we haven't let them know about, like raise the building, which I think is a whole different discussion.
yes,
I think at this point, it's simply wrapping up 3 or 4. How many times have we been to the public? 3 or 4 times.
yeah,
It's just giving them the information of this is what the final design is going to be.
Okay. So one of the things that's important is how we describe this meeting. And what you're describing is not an open house. People expect
Mm-hmm.
answers and questions and changes from an open house. So in your scenario, this would be a report to the community
yeah.
rather than an open house. We just need to set expectations correctly
Mm-hmm.
and be careful about what we talk about.
Agreed.
We were thinking, and Tweed and I are totally comfortable with public information. We just
Right.
want to think it through. We were thinking if it's just public information and we call it, what'd you say we call it?
A report
A
to the
report.
community. Yeah.
We still do a presentation and we still do Q&A and we still have displays. We don't give individual response form and say, do you have serious concerns? We were thinking we put a big scroll of butcher paper up on the wall and we just label it comments about the plan or something, and people can write whatever they want to up there and everybody else can read everybody else's comments, and it's just kind of loose and easy.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's good. I think that's where we are. Again, barring any major changes here, I think that's where we are.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that. We've been over backwards. I think the task force has done a good job of trying to get the community engaged. The people who've gotten engaged, I think, have certainly influenced the plan. I think we've done a good job of listening to what we've heard. And I think we have a very defensible plan, and we can draw direct lines from here's what people said, so here's what's in the plan. And if there are any direct lines we need to draw from here's what people said, but here's not what's in the plan and here's why, that's okay. We just need to explain why it's not in the plan.
Right.
That we just couldn't make it work. But I don't think there's much that we've heard that isn't in the plan.
Mm-mm.
Or that
So-
we can't defendably give an answer to.
Right. So everybody comfortable with public information? Joel, you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? I was just, sometimes I struggle because we as a task force have processed so much information, and we don't always connect the dots for the community. And I'm wondering if, because as soon as you said something up on the wall, I don't know if we want to embrace and actually start to sell people on the excitement of the project. Like, I don't know if you would want to, we highlight the fact that I just think the flex space is terrific. I don't know if there'd be any reason or energy to just highlight it and sell people on, hey, we're really excited about this space. And then if we even had like something colorful or fun or whatever, just, because we have these, I'm pointing to my screen that you can't even see that. We have these drawings that we've processed through, but maybe it would be good to communicate to the public that this is a flex space. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we can, when we have displays, we can communicate whatever we
Right.
want to communicate. And we also, Tweet came up with a great question that maybe we want to put this at the top of the comment wall. What do you hope for the future of Hiawatha Gardens? I mean, that's kind of, it's a positive, how do you see this working for the community and all that sort of stuff? Anyway, we can come up with the questions, but.
I do worry a little bit about that particular question, Susan and Tweed, just because we've kind of asked that question multiple times before in terms, and there's still such confusion over what a community center is versus what an event center is.
Okay, that's fine.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no worries. Not a big deal. We can just have a big comment sheet and people can write whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be, just because we've asked them, what do you want the future, what do you want to see at Hiawatha Gardens? And there's grocery stores, there's any number of things. And we slowly but surely eliminated and narrowed it down to a community center, which is a defined purpose, and an event center, which is a defined purpose. So.
Okay. This is not my strength, but what about, what if the question was more of like, what are you most excited about with the site, and let's just go ahead and not talk about the negatives so much, but maybe I'm just trying to really, embrace this and go forward with it. And what are you most excited about? Because, we've been in the trenches with this for 2 years, and yeah. I was rounding down, Nancy. I was rounding down.
I've been in it Ann's been in it the longest, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
2017. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to insult the time then. But what if we changed it to more, what are you most excited about? What are you most excited to get to do when you come on site? I mean, I don't know. What if we kind of change the rhetoric to that and moved on our way?
I understand what you're trying to do, but we need to be very careful because community meetings in this area have gotten so out of hand, negative, nasty.
Yes, that's right.
That we need to be very careful not to encourage pushback with, well, you didn't let us say what we didn't like, or you didn't let us do this or that. We want to avoid that. So maybe we are very careful with just a question that people can write whatever they want.
Maybe we don't put a question up.
That's what I'm thinking.
But
Yeah.
Joel, I agree with you. It would be nice to kind of celebrate this.
I think
and
so.
to try to generate some. So let's think about that and think how we can add that element without asking a loaded question.
Right.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah. I
Good.
think that would be cool if we
I
could
do
do that.
Because there is a lot of discussion out in the community too about why is it taking you guys so long? And I think it is a celebration. If we're there, let's say, hey, we're about to cross the finish line on this.
Yeah.
And I really liked what you said, Susan, tweet about connecting the direct connection, the dots between what the input to how it's looking now. I think that's very important, that we have listened to the community, and it's been quite the balancing act.
Yeah. And I think we really need to specifically, if it's with a bubble here with a line to where it is. We heard this and here it is in the plan, or we
Yeah.
heard this and here it is. That's
Right.
really, really, really important. And it's also important, again, if we heard something and we just couldn't do it,
Yeah.
Why not?
Why?
we
Yeah.
need to say why and have a good explanation. Not a defensive, but just here are the facts, and we just couldn't make it
Right.
work.
Right. So it's 2 minutes to
Right.
5. So, do you have everything you need, Susan and Tweed, now to?
Sure. Yep.
Great, thank you. So I would recommend that next week we see the plaza design, updated plaza design. And Dole, I don't know if you're ready to talk about the sustainability discussion, but I think that that would be great if you continue to work on that. You mentioned some of it today,
Yeah.
but I think actually starting to fill in the blanks in terms of estimates on how much cost, maintenance, air conditioning,
We're
full-time.
gonna, I think your guidance, and I think it's good, is we'll start and then we'll start filling the blanks. Megan is totally on board with helping. So yeah, I think we can present a first draft of what we're looking for. We may not have a lot of data, but we can at least talk utilities and rental fees and that kind of thing. Yep.
Okay,
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
I'll let it go till later, Nancy. We'll do it next time.
you've got 1
Oh,
minute. We
You
can
got
do
1
it
minute.
What are we calling this thing? Are we calling it the preferred design? Are we calling it the preferred plan? Are we calling it the concept? I don't know what to call it. We've had so many names. At one point, we said it was the preferred design, but so we don't have to decide that today, but we need to know before we start promoting it.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's
I'll
the
send you
final
what's in our
design.
contract because we went some rounds about it.
So
Yeah.
I don't,
And though it doesn't
we-
become the final design until
council's
says,
approved
yes,
it,
is.
right? I think it's our preferred
Proposed
something.
final design.
Okay.
Well, we'll figure it out. We'll
Yeah,
figure it
but
out.
we need
But
to
we
figure
can't
out-
say final because my phone will light up if it gets presented
Okay.
as final and they didn't get a chance to
Yeah.
comment on it. Yep.
So we have two things to think about. How are we gonna make the public update celebration, and what are we gonna call this beast that we're producing?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so with that,
The beast.
thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Okay. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.